I chose my topic to be men's versus women's pay in sports. This is something that's super important to me as a female student athlete because I've seen how much time and effort both me and my teammates put into our sport every day. And I believe that all women should be properly compensated for the amount of time and effort that they put into their sport, and that gender should not influence that. Some background information. Women have historically been paid less than men in various fields of life, but especially in sports. Many instances have been featured in the news, but some of the most notable ones are the U.S. women's national team and the U.S. men's national team differences in pay and Caitlin Clark's pay. There are differing viewpoints on how equal pay is possible and if it's even justified, and you can see that through the articles that I chose. First is an article by The Guardian, which discusses Caitlin Clark's pay for the first 5 years of her in the WNBA. It provided data and viewpoints supporting higher pay and the justification of her pay, so it gave opposing viewpoints on the topic for the argument and the counter-argument. So it was more of an unbiased, informative article. The next is an article by CNN, which outlines the U.S. women's national team lawsuit against the U.S. Soccer Federation, where they filed for gender discrimination. It was a bit more supportive towards the women's national team and was a little bit more biased because a woman wrote it, and she seemed to really support women in sports and gave data and facts in support of the argument for higher pay for women's sports. Some similarities in the discourse practices used by The Guardian and CNN articles would be that they both included narratives of women's sports, which provided background and that they used to build their article off of. They both took stances on women's sports by simply just writing articles, and they both used informing to help support their arguments and help give data to give the reader some context and just make their arguments more strong. Some differences in the discourse practices used was the Guardian article took a more neutral stance, whereas the CNN article made their stance more obvious and in favor of higher pay for women's sports. The Guardian article used the narrative of Caitlin Clark to provide background information, which they used to kind of build off of throughout their article. And the CNN article used the story of the U.S. women's national team to help provoke emotion within the reader and make them feel the need to make a change. CNN used informing to support women in sports, but The Guardian utilized informing to show how women's pay isn't justified and how it is justified. So they used informing in both ways instead of just for one argument. In conclusion, both used discourse practices to enhance their argument, but in very different ways because they had different goals. One was to persuade, which is what the CNN article was trying to do, and one was to inform, which was what the Guardian article was trying to do. They show how